Well, I'm Kim Berry, and I am sitting next to a man who was truly one of my jazz heroes. And Bobby Watson, as I told you earlier, I just loved your music from the first note, hearing you play Ciora.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
very
you,
much.
Kim.
You know, after decades of living in New York City, you know, you decided to move back home to Kansas and, you know, accepted the position. Was it professor of jazz studies
Yes,
at the
director.
University? I'm sorry.
Director of Jazz Studies.
Director of Jazz Studies at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. What was that transition like? I mean, we know how fast-paced and just how intense living in New York is, and then going back home. How was that transition?
It wasn't as hard as you might imagine because I was going home. You know, I was born in Lawrence, Kansas, and Pam and my parents were both still living at the time, and I had a couple brothers that were living there, so it was familiar territory to me, and that kind of made it easy, and it took a lot of anxiety and trepidation away from me going home. And the slower pace was good for me, and it's still good for me because it changes the way I play. I'm not so much into louder, faster, higher, you know, which I've done, and I've liked that. And I can still do that when I want to, or if the music calls for it, you know, basically. But going home, hearing the wind blow through the trees again, looking at the clouds, you know, the clouds are like our mountains out there. And also, most importantly, being able to spend time with both of our parents in their later years and be there for them, you know, when they transitioned. And that was a big part of it as well. And in New York, I could book myself every day. I kind of reached a critical mass where I could play this club, but then you couldn't play that club, you know, because you had you know, drummers and pianists and bassists, they can play any club, anytime. You know, they could be at the Vanguard for 3 weeks in a row. Like Victor Lewis used to leave his drums there. Sometimes he was playing with Kenny Barron and others. He would just leave his drums there he parked there for a couple weeks, 3 weeks. Horn players couldn't do that, you know. I could play Bradley's, the After Hours place. And
That was a beautiful club.
yeah, that was a lot of memories there. That was like Zardy's, is that the place I'm thinking about, where all the actors would come after work?
Started, yeah. That would be wonderful because it would be like at 2 o'clock in the morning and everybody got off their gigs and they would all show up.
Oh, yeah,
at Bradley's. That was
Eddie
beautiful.
Carter and Cecil
Yeah.
Taylor and David Murray and George Coleman. We'd all be there and we'd meet. So all the boundaries that the industry had built for each one of us and put us in a certain category, that all went away when we got to Bradley's. This is a big brother and sisterhood there. And that was very important for me. So there's a lot of things about New York that I still miss being out in Kansas City. I don't know how to put it into words. New York is New York, and Kansas City is Kansas City. And you got to drive a lot of places. You
That's
know,
right.
You know, spread out.
You know, I was just thinking about when you mentioned Victor Lewis. I will never forget you referred to him as the uncrowned king of the drums.
That's right, the uncrowned king.
Victor Lewis and Lewis Hayes, and of course we are going to get to Art Blakey, Buhana. How did you get that gig with Art Blakey? I don't think I've ever really realized how you did that.
When I first got to New York, I was staying in an apartment with all the University of Miami alumni, Hiram Bullock and Chris Carter, and then they were in this other scene. David Sanborn used to come by, and they'd have these jam sessions in the basement, and I met Will Lee there. His father was actually the dean of the music school at Frost School.
Okay.
And so that was like the Miami hang pad till we could get our own. And so I would go out every night, you know, and usually me and Pam would go out together. And we had a place where we would sit outside of each club. We had a spot by the Vanguard in the back. We had a place at the bottom line where we could hear the music. And all these places we could hear and listen with Boomers. That was another club on Bleecker Street. We could go out and we could hear the music outside, and then we'd hang out, you know, and cats would come out, and, you know, I'd have my horn, but they got to know us. Jabali, Billy Hart, he was one of the first ones that took us in, and he would give us rides home, you know, and then I met this guy, Joe Kingston, who was like used to play bass, but he was like a character around town. You know, he had a couple husky dogs, and he was a character, you know. And he knew Art, he knew Curtis Fuller. So he hooked me up with Curtis Fuller, and they were playing at Storyville. There was George Wean's club up around in the 50s. So Curtis was with Count Basie then, and there was also Jimmy Forrest and Chris Woods, alto. There's Butch Miles, and you know, Kenny Barron would be there sometimes, and they would have that gig when they got off the road. So Curtis got me up in that. So I would sit in with them, and Curtis used to say, you need to be with the boo. You need to be with the boo, man. And so Joe Kingston hooked it up on his birthday, October 11th, and brought him down to the club. He had just got in town, I think, from Canada, and brought him down, got him a bottle of champagne, and he came down, and you got to hear this young guy. And so I'm up there playing, and Butch Miles is playing, and we're having a good time. And then Art, he comes up, and he takes the drums, and they make that drummer switch where they take one stick, and then they move over, and he takes the other stick, then he sits behind the drum, and all of a sudden, the beat changed, you know, like the feeling. It's like going down the road doing 60, and his truck comes and hits you doing 70, you know. Boom. I was like, oh, boy. And he's back there, blow, blow, blow. So we played, and then he grabbed me and took me into the men's room, which I called the jazz office. And he said the classic words that I knew I was in the ballpark when I got to New York. Nobody would go, man, you're killing, man, that's spoken. No, they would, because a lot of bands were coming through New York, and when they would have a few days off, they'd spread out over the Manhattan, and they would sit in with cats. So when the cats heard me, they would say, "Who are you with?" And that was my phrase of validation. They said, "Who are you with?" I said, "No, I'm not with nobody," you know. And so that was their way of saying you're on a certain level, because they thought I was in town with some other band.
Right.
So the same thing when Art took me into the men's room, he said, "So who are you with?" And I said, "I'm nobody. So how would you like to be with the Jazz Messengers?" And I go, "Yeah." I thought it over for like a microsecond. And then, you know, I started hanging out with him, you know, Pam and I, and he took me under his wing, gave me a stack of records, told me to learn the music.
You were his music director.
Yes.
I believe, and you were also there in the band from 1977 to 1981.
That's right.
How did he determine that you were the music director?
Art likes to delegate authority. When I first got in the band, Walter Davis was in the band for half a year or so. And the first record we did, Gypsy Folktales, Walter Davis was on the piano, and Dennis Irwin, you know, like this. And so Walter Davis was musical director. He gave titles, you know. You have the Straw Boss, the musical director. And then after, and on that Gypsy Folktale records, his partner, Jim Green, who was like his road manager, valet, quite a character, he had told Art that I had some music. So after we ran through and recorded Walter Davis' tune, Jody and Ronnie's the Dynamite Lady and stuff, then he looks right at me and goes, "Who got something?" He's looking right at me like, who got something? So I got 2 tunes recorded, and it was funny because David Schnitter had been in the band about 4 years, and he had never brought any music in.
That's interesting.
And I've been in the band about 3 weeks, and all of a sudden I got two songs on a Art Blakey record. And so he went home and he put something together for the second day, and we helped him get it on the album. But that was like a shift in the culture of that band when I got in there. So I assume Wayne was the musical director because he did a lot of writing, maybe Cedar at one point. So it was just, Art would delegate authority, and he made me the musical director.
I think Terrence Blanchard was his musical
He
director.
could have been a
at some
musical
point, too.
director, Frank Lacey.
Yeah. The beautiful thing about going through, as they call the University of Art Blakey,
That's right.
some of the most incredible writers have come through that band. We were talking about this earlier.
right.
I mean, yourself, Wayne Shorter, Benny Golson, Cedar Walton, Horace Silver, Bobby Timmons. Think about that. J. Mac, Woody Shaw, and people in your generation like Charles Fambro and Mulgrew Miller, Donald Brown.
Donald Brown
is like an American treasure.
Yes.
And in my generation, Kenny Garrett.
James Williams.
James Williams,
Don't forget
that's right.
James.
That's right. That's right. How did he encourage you and help you in terms of developing your writing skills, arranging skills? Because it's almost like he had some kind of, I don't know what it was, but to have all of these incredible writers, be in the bands.
Art was a very musical and a very dynamic drummer. And when you just listen to him throughout the evening, you learn you learn his strengths, and he exploited his weaknesses too. So people wrote around him, and because I wrote some songs that he didn't play, because it wasn't for him, didn't work.
Right.
No odd meters. Maybe he might do 5, 4 or something. He loved waltzes, but there's certain things he would stay away from really total Latin tunes. I wrote a tune for him called Maya's Apartment, and he liked it. He said, "But Bobby, we need a proper rhythm section for that." So, and I've had other couple of things that I've played. They were like they didn't make it, but I recorded them later. But you learn he was so consistent. Because any Art Blakey record you listen to, a Messenger record, if he starts out with a drum solo, and when he brings the band in, he had his signature intro to bring the band in, until the band hit, when Art was soloing by himself, you don't know what year it was. You don't know what year it was. It could have been in the 50s or 60s. When Art's playing, it's timeless. So you learn his language, and you learn to play to his strengths, because he's a drummer leader, and things that he liked to do because he was a drummer leader. So that's how most of the guys that had success writing for him, they wrote to his strengths and tendencies.
And also, all of those guys wrote modern jazz classics. Fuller Love / In Case You Missed It.
That's right.
I think, did Pam do Miss BC with the Messenger?
There's a story about
we
that
gotta give
one.
props to your wife Pam. She's incredible. She's an incredible writer.
I got to tell you a quick story about Miss BC.
Go ahead. Well, that's Betty Carter, right?
Yeah, Betty Carter. She wrote this song, and I arranged it for the 3 horns, and I brought it into the band and didn't tell nobody who wrote it, because men can be a little misogynistic, so we played it. Everybody loved it. They just assumed I wrote it, and I was like, cool, And we'd open every night with Miss BC, and then we had this trip. We drove, me and Pam and the band. We drove from New York to San Francisco to the Keystone Corner, and so it was opening night, and Pam was in the audience. And I know we're going to open with Miss BC. So I went backstage to Art. I said, Art, man, I got to tell you, man, Pam's in the audience, and I didn't want to tell you that Pam wrote the tune, because you guys probably wouldn't have played it, because they thought I was like, they had words for men who catered to their wives because they were afraid.
I can only imagine.
Because they were afraid that if they would get the locks changed on the house, like that kind of thing. I'm just putting it mildly. So, but I knew Pam was like, she's got this thing going. So I slipped it in there, and I had confession time came. I said, all right, I have to tell you, man, Pam wrote that tune. What? I said, yeah, because she's out in the audience, because he would announce it that I wrote it every night. And I just let it slide. But that night I had to confess. And so we went out there and we played it, and he goes, that was Miss BC by Bobby's wife, Pamela Watson. Stand up, please,
That was beautiful.
Take a bow. And he said, well, Pam writes all his music and Bobby puts his name on it. So that was a joke for the rest of the time I was there. But, it was a powerful piece of music, and it deserved to be heard, and it could stand on its own merit.
Absolutely.
Not because she was my wife, but because she's a great artist as well.
And I also like the big band version that you did.
Oh, yeah, that was cool. I did that for Betty Carter.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about there's just such an incredible canon of music. Just if you just went by the Jazz Messengers alone and the writers of the Jazz Messengers, you have a whole canon, and you do have a whole canon of music. I was talking to a friend a couple of months ago who's also an educator, and he mentioned that he would love if his students did not play, like, no disrespect, to like the Cole Porters and the Gershwins and Rodgers and Hart. He said there's enough music from our generation, your generation, where we could be doing that instead of, playing, how many times you going to play Love for Sale?
Yeah, this is true. This is very true. I mean, it's kind of like, I forgot who just passed away. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They're playing all his music on the radio. It's just like, oh, that's very nice, but that doesn't do him any good. But if he has his publishing together, then it goes to the estate. But at the same time, I think it'd be nice if people played, my tunes and Curtis Lundy's and et cetera, James and Kenny Garrett, et cetera, and unless I have something really special, I don't even really play bird tunes. I don't really even.
Now that I think about it, I think the only time you did it was on that Bird 100.
Yeah, I did. That was that was like a contrafact over confirmation. So that was confirmation underneath, but it was like birdish on top. And then I did on one of my records, I did Mohawk, but it was like totally different, a combination of train and bird. So I'm not going to touch those type of things that have been around unless I can bring something to it, because it's so routine to know these. I mean, it's almost like your ground school if you're in aviation, the ground school of learning the music to play rhythm changes and this and that and the other, like you say, the American Songbook, as they say. I think, to me, the American Songbook has a place for survival. A lot of gigs that you do that aren't, jazz, total expression gigs, you can make a lot of money just knowing a lot of songs. And because most gigs, they don't want to hear originals, live and on a certain level.
Wow.
Only in certain spaces. If you go to the Vanguard, the top clubs in New York, maybe the top listening rooms in each town, the showcase in Chicago, the Blue Room in Kansas City, different places, Baker's Keyboard Lounge in Detroit, different things like that. When you go there, the audience is expecting to hear a level of creativity and expression. But most gigs you do, you get paid very well. They want to hear something they know. A lot of Duke Ellington. See, there's other things you can get around that. There's a lot of Duke Ellington songs you can play. There's a lot of Herbie Hancock songs you can play to these people. They know Watermelon Man, and the other ones. It's Horace Silver. Those type of songs that you can play on those type of gigs that, to me, are just as important, in fact, more important to me than playing Rodgers and Hart and all them suckers, because they already got their villas in the mountains somewhere in there.
Or in heaven.
Or heaven, yeah. But, there's ways around it. You know, there's a lot of jazz standards that a lot of people know.
Modern jazz standards.
Modern jazz standards. Yes, right.
And you've written several of them as well.
So I've heard.
Yeah, you have. What was my next question going to be? About the whole concept. Well, one thing, they'll probably cut this out or whatever. I was just thinking while you were talking about like standards and originals, I remember, this is just how my mind works. Whenever I get a new CD, and even when I got a new CD, I always wanted to hear what you guys wrote first. I didn't want to hear the standards. I said, look, I want to hear what does he bring into the table? I would really
appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way, I'm a musician's kid, so that's just the way my mind works.
Yeah, Kim, we almost didn't get started playing tonight because we were here reminiscing. She's so deep, this lady here.
And
Kim
I've
Berry.
known him for like what?
We don't want to say
years.
But she's seen my kids grow up, and many other musicians' kids grow up. You know, because we started in this business when we were very young ourselves. So. But it's been a great ride, and they always say you have a little run. So I've had maybe a couple of or 3 good runs already. You know, because you go up, then you go down, and you have to disappear so you can reappear, and all those cliches. It's not a straight line like this,
Especially not for jazz musicians.
No, some people are blessed with that, but for the most part, most of us out here, we have runs, and you get a lot of publicity, and then because the bittersweet thing is if you do a big festival and it's so wonderful and the people love you, 9 times out of 10 you can't go back next year.
Why?
Well, they got to move it around. And the artistic director, we had Bobby this year. Now we're going to bring in Donald Harrison next year, and that's the business, But as long as you keep playing with your heart, it rotates. You can keep appearing in different ways. You can come back every other year or whatever. You see. So, and this year you do this one, the next year you do that one. It's kind of this keeps rolling like this. So it's beautiful.
I was thinking too, just about this whole myth, and I believe it's a myth that young people do not like jazz.
Oh.
They aren't interested in jazz. They're more interested in hip hop and whatnot. And I know a personal example of mine, Jaleel Shaw. Who you've known and mentored. We've both known and mentored forever. Yeah. I distinctly remember when he was, I think he was maybe 13 or 14, and I used to work at Tower Records, and I remember seeing him just clutching the First Horizon record, no question about it, like it was the Bible. His mother Olivia had just taken him, she had just taken him, and he purchased it. He's like, I'm Bobby Watson, I'm a Bobby Watson fanatic. Bobby Watson. I mean, you know how much he loved and still loves you. And you look at somebody like him and just see how he's grown.
Oh yeah, he's taken the language on his horn, what he plays. I'm like trying to get what he's doing now. I ain't lying.
That's beautiful though that you can learn from one of your students.
He's extended it, and also with the feeling and expression, because we were also talking about because of jazz in the schools now, there's a high level of technique on instruments, and I have to say, pianists that but there's not the life experience and expression, that's what has to happen. And you can only get that through experience. You have to maybe have your heart broken, have some disappointments, get knocked down and get back up, Like they say, we fall down, but we get up. A righteous man falls 7 times.
Right.
7. Not literally 7. It could be 20 times, but however long it takes him to get it, you fall down. It might be 1 time, but that's what you can't teach the blues. You have to learn the blues, and the blues is very intimidating.
How so?
Well, say if you come from a middle class family, you know, and everything is hunky dory, and now you got to play a blues. It's like I don't really feel authorized. I don't feel like I'm qualified to play a blues. You know, so you have to learn the blues. It's like very intimidating. I've had musicians where I've worked with, and I said, "Let's play a blues," and they I don't know. I had this one guy. He got on his knees and begged me not to play a blues.
Oh my God!
He started crying. Please, Bobby, let's not play a blues. I'm like, wow. You know, I mean, the blues, you know, it's intimidating. You know, you can go up and down the instrument, but man, let's play a blues, man, and mean it. You know, because when I was growing up, I stood by some musicians that could play the blues, and you could feel it.
Yeah,
you could feel it, and that's what I knew what I was lacking. You know, it's a truth serum, the blues. It'll make you know what you're lacking, and then it makes you self-examine yourself and what do you want to play. What do you want to play that comes out your horn that's for real, for real? You know, you can do triple flops and all that stuff, but now you want to play some blues or have some blues in your playing so that people know that you mean it, you know? You know, I'm not fronting, you know. I can play some blues.
you've always had that, though.
Well,
You have always had that. I knew that just from the first time I heard you. Always had that. It's such a beautiful sound, and just, I mean, so many of your compositions. Old for Aaron. I played Sure Thing today from Love Remains. That's a beautiful record. I mean, you've done so many things. Just so much beautiful music. What are you doing? What are you planning for the future? Are you just hanging out in Kansas City and coming to visit us? We're blessed to have you here in Denver.
I just want to do gigs that and performances where I'm invited, get compensated well, and it's comfortable. And I would like to expand my palette beyond the quartet and quintet thing. That's really what I want to do. I have some big band stuff. I have some. I want to do some stuff with extra. I love guitar. I want guitar. I've reached out to Pat Metheny. We're going to do something in the future. I want to expand my palette. You know, there's a couple of English musicians that I love. I forget his name right now, but he plays piano and sings. He's done them NPR small.
Tiny Desk concert.
Yeah, Tiny Desk. He's very interesting. I like to be able to have the finances to reach out to certain people and bring them in. You know, Will Calhoun. I want to do some stuff with Will Calhoun. I mean, we've done some stuff before, and I recorded together. But I want to bring more people. I mean, Curtis is my man, but I want to do, you know, have him be a part of something bigger. The cats that are my core, I like to have them be a part of something bigger. So that's what I would like to do, and that takes money. I'd like to do an album with strings. Aaron has been on my butt for years. Dad, you got to do an album with strings, you know. So I'm like, that's what I'd like to do, you know, orchestra. I just would like to expand the palette.
Let's put that out in the universe, and it'll happen. I believe it.
I believe that. Thank you. It's good to hear you say that.
And no saxophone quartets, though, like 29th Street.
Well, the 29th Street.
I got you with that one, see?
Yeah, we're gonna have to bring some oxygen tanks out there with us, and we'll probably sit on stools. We did some recording a couple years ago. We was in New York at Ed Jackson's. He's got a place called Jackson Room.
Oh, really?
And so we did 2 nights there, and we recorded it, and we rehearsed for a week before we. Jim came over from Holland, and Willie Williams is in the band now. Not
from
Rich
Philly.
Rothenberg stopped playing. You know?
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but that sax quartet, man, that's a really personal. It's more personal than a quartet with rhythm section because you got 4 guys, and you're making complete music, and it's like we all depend on each other. and it's like an amoeba. We're like this organism that, but we're getting older now, so I don't know if we would get a chance to do it the way we would like to. 'Cause we would need some stools and we would need we would need some special devices and equipment to make it happen. 'Cause we were young and we was running all around the stage and we had choreography. And, we were something else, man.
That was a nice band.
It is.
You are such a blessing to this music.
I appreciate that.
And,
Kim.
like I said, you've been one of my heroes from day one. I remember the day I met you, it was during an RTI fundraiser, and you brought in your beautiful little family. It was Pam and Aaron was the leader boy and Lafia, and I just remember just being so impressed and I said, this is a stand-up guy with just a beautiful family, and he's just an incredible musician, and that always made a great impression on me. It really did.
Well, it's been a blessing. I mean, because having a family and kids, that's not really a story.
But being a professional,
a
working jazz musician.
A working jazz musician,
Yeah, that's
and trying
tough.
to have a stable home for your kids, I realized early on, that's not really newsworthy, but it's still...
You don't think
coming
so?
from, people don't write about that kind of stuff.
They should, though. I mean, you
I
should
thought
really get your flowers for that.
Well, seeing them grow up and thrive, that's my flowers, and we're all still here, and they got a chance to know all their cousins, their aunts and uncles, and their grandparents. So we would drive home every summer after they got out of school. We'd take 3 days to get to Kansas City, and then we stay with my parents for a while and Pam's parents, and they grew up with their cousins, and that's to continue that bond in the family. They all know the Lord's Prayer. They love Gates Barbecue, and they're both rabid Knicks fans.
I love it.
So we've been to hold that together. We have that in common.
Thank you so much for joining us. I could talk to you forever, but we can't. But again, you are just such a blessing to this music. And again, you have always been one of my jazz heroes, and I mean that sincerely. People like you and Charles Fambro, rest his soul. There are just certain people who, Kenny Barron, certain musicians that are just at such a level. You just can't help it. Not only do you love their music and their musicianships and their compositions, the whole package just as a human being.
Thank you. I just always want to be in that number. I just want to be in the number. Don't have to be number one, but just when the Saints go marching in, I want to be in that number.
You will. You will.
Thank you.
They'll be playing your horn too. St.
That's
Peter.
right. That's right. It's not the trumpet. That thing in the Bible, that's a myth. It's about Gabriel.
Yeah.
With the trumpet. No, the saxophone's gonna do it, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.